Update. Am I the a-hole for responding to my father's request for a relationship with a PowerPoint? Original post. If I'm the a-hole here, I'll own it. I'm not sorry. But it would be good to know because the rest of my family thinks this went too far. My 24 female mom died when I was 7 from leukemia. I have very few memories of her from before she was sick, and I didn't get to spend a lot of time with her in her last year. But she was an artist, and until she couldn't anymore, she would make me little collages when she was in the hospital with drawings and photos and messages for me. My grandmother put them all in a book for me after she died. I wanted to be like my mom, and my counselor thought it would help, so I started a journal where I would do kind of a similar thing. And I've done at least 1 page a week all these years ever since my mom died. More when I miss her or have something hard going on. So, I have a kind of unique record of my mental state over the last 16 years. My father remarried when I was 9. My stepmother really leaned hard into the "I'm your mom now," and my father didn't stop her. It improved when they had my half-brother because she basically forgot about me then. Unfortunately, he got cancer when he was 3, and I pretty much ceased to exist for my father. He was either working or gone with my brother, but I spent all my teen years mostly at home alone or with my grandparents. The mantra was that my brother needed to be the focus because he might die, so I needed to not be selfish since I was healthy. I stopped trying to talk to him when I was 16, and it was a dark time. I moved out when I was 18 and cut them off completely. My grandparents let me know that my brother died a couple of years ago, but respected my desire to remain no contact with my father. He recently reached out to them because he wants to see me and talk. I went through my old journals and made him a PowerPoint with images of the entries where I had talked about being frustrated and feeling abandoned and unwanted. Some with literal quotes of things my dad had said to me during arguments, even the really dark stuff from when I was seriously depressed. Then, I ended it with a photo of one of my mom's collages where she had written, "Remember that your dad and I are always here for you." And I wrote underneath it, "You failed. Go away." I felt like him being able to see it from my literal perspective would communicate why I don't want him back better than I could. Evidently it worked, but a little too well, because I've been bombarded by family telling me that it's understandable that I don't want to see him, but what I sent gutted him, and he's completely fallen apart after reading through it and it was unnecessarily cruel. Maybe it was. I know my bar for that is kind of weird sometimes. So, am I the a-hole? Edit. A couple of follow-up notes since it came up to comments. 1. I loved my brother. I don't resent him. He was a good kid and I wish he was still with us. None of this is his fault. To me, it is completely my father's and to a lesser extent, stepmother's. The parents prevented me from spending time with him as he got sicker. So I wouldn't have been allowed to be there for him even if I had been able to, which I wasn't towards the end because I was also struggling to stay alive. 2. I have empathy. I understand what my father lost. I was there. I also lost same people plus effectively my father. Even so, to me there was no excuse for completely shutting your own kid completely out of your life, while also preventing them from getting any kind of help. I understand depression and freezing up. I've been there. And I still, even not being an adult, managed to consider the impact of my behavior on other people. If he was that bad off, he should have given me up to be raised by someone else. My mom's parents asked, and he wouldn't agree to let me stay with them full time. I could have had a dad that was able to occasionally tell me he loved me, even if it was just a text message. Alternatively, I could have lived with my grandparents and had people around me who cared about me every day, even if that wasn't my father. I got neither, and every request for help of any kind was met with "suck it up." I can empathize with having to function while breaking down inside, but I can't empathize with what he did. 3. I gather from relatives, who have backed off after some hard boundary setting, that my father and stepmother split not long ago and are in divorce proceedings, which is why he reached out now, and why the rest of the family was upset with how I responded at a time. He wasn't in a good place already. I've told them that if they care about him, to encourage him to keep away from me, refuse to pass on any messages, and try to get him into inpatient care or something if they're that worried he's going to do something rash. I don't want anything to do with him, and I've told them that I don't want to hear about anything that happens after this point, but the rest of his family love him, so for their sake I hope he pulls himself together. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. I have a saying, if the truth about your conduct paints you in a bad light, the problem isn't with the truth, it's with your conduct. If the truth hurts your dad, it's his own to deal with and not on you. I like to say, if the truth hurts, you deserve it. In my experience with narcissists, that doesn't resonate the same way, which is why I started saying it the other way. Doesn't stop them from trying to gaslight the situation. It didn't happen that way, etc. So when you show proof and tell them their conduct is the problem, not the truth, it helps take the wind out of their sails. It's not a surefire thing with narcs, but it really helps deflate them. Not the a-hole in the slightest. You told your dad how you felt, and it made him have to confront his failure as a parent. It is not your fault he neglected you. He is upset because he knows that what you put in a PowerPoint is the reality of how he treated you when you were just a child. Now that the truth is out and you have reestablished no contact, I hope you are able to let go of some of the anger you have at him and know that you did nothing to cause how he treated you. I'm no contact with my dad, and I have been able to find a lot of peace in the life I have built without him. I hope for the same for you. Not the a-hole. How arrogant of OP's family to expect OP to cover up OP's feelings for your terrible father. Now for the update. A bunch of people have been asking for an update, so I'm doing it here instead of on the main sub because the original blew up more than I want to deal with again. I had a talk with my paternal grandparents over Christmas vacation and showed them the PowerPoint. They had no idea that things were as bad as they were, or that I was actively self-harming at a time, and that the accidents I had as a teen were not really accidents. So while they think it was still dangerously harsh under the circumstances, they understand better where I'm coming from, admitted that my father messed up big time, and that the family should have been more involved with me, instead of just supporting him and my brother. They said that on the surface they thought I was fine and just having trouble adjusting, but if they had known about the things described in the journal, they would have insisted my father get help. They do want me to reconcile with him, but they understand why it might be too late for that. So they've agreed not to bring him up unless I do first, and not pass on information either way. So that was actually productive. As for my father, I know a lot of people think I'll regret it if I don't reconcile/forgive/whatever, but I'm not so sure that's true. I've tried to imagine a conversation with him that wouldn't make things worse, and I can't. Best case scenario? He's sorry and has a good grovel, but honestly, I think hearing that would just make me hate him more. Worst case scenario, nothing has really changed and I have to walk away before I end up with an assault charge. I also just can't imagine any real benefit or function to having him in my life, so reconnecting seems like a lot of work for no gain. As far as forgiveness, I don't know if that's actually possible. Apathy maybe. As far as I know, he's alive. I've made it super clear that anyone who tries to give me information about him that I don't request will also get the chop. So I'm probably not going to get any further updates. I'd rather just go back to forgetting he exists. For me, I'm probably as fine as I'm going to be. I have therapy and meds, so I can pass for a functional human most of the time. My deal with myself is that I have to at least stick around until my maternal grandparents pass so they don't hurt and I can wrap things up for them. So in the meantime, I'm working on finding other ways in Detra. Spites, possibly. Next story. Am I the a-hole for putting medical fees on my mom's credit card? Plus update. Original post. I, female 25, was given temporary guardianship of my baby sister, female 15, for 6 weeks in the fall, while my parents, male 48 and female 46, had to be overseas for several reasons. Our parents left me with mom's car and keys, as well as her credit card for any expenses I might run into. On the first day that she stayed with me, my sister told me she had been having really bad tooth pain for a few weeks now. She was chewing only in one side of her mouth and sort of hesitant to eat. I told her I'd set her up a dentist's appointment, and I did make her one later in the week, but the next day she had a fever, and her face looked somewhat swollen on that side. Plus, she said her pain was much worse. So I called the dentist again and they were able to see her that day. It ended up being an infected abscess. We needed to pull the tooth, drain the abscess, and get her antibiotics. My parents' insurance covered a lot of it, but I wasn't sure about what to do about the rest, and my parents weren't answering the phone all day due to time zone difference. So, I just put down mom's credit card for the amount that needed to be covered right then, as well as to pay for the antibiotic prescription when I picked it up. I didn't think much of this at a time, but when my parents found out, they were pissed. Dad said the credit card was for standard everyday expenses like food and gas, not emergency funds, which they didn't specify this before nor provide separate money for emergencies, and that I overstepped my bounds by dropping a large sum of money and such a rash and expensive choice that mom was going to have to pay off. I offered to pay it back since it's technically within my means, but he said forget it. It's too late now due to my impulsivity. Mom also made an offhand comment about how I didn't triple check to make sure my sister actually needed medical attention, rather than trying to get out of school. This was a while ago, so I thought it was behind us. My parents told me we weren't gathering for the holidays this winter, but I found out yesterday from my sister that a bunch of family had visited and my parents hosted. So I'm sure they're more upset than I thought. My take is that I made a necessary decision for my sister's well-being and I don't regret it. But I could have done more to make sure I handled it in a more appropriate way financially, and maybe waited to go through with anything until we could get in touch. However, I offered to reimburse and was turned down. As the acting legal guardian at the time, it seemed urgent. I was worried about my little sister and the treatment needed to be paid for. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Absolutely not the a-hole, but your parents sure are. A dental abscess is not the kind of thing you ignore, and certainly isn't an excuse to get out of school. Left untreated, it can result in sepsis, aka blood poisoning. As I am a cynical person, I'd say they're angry because they've been ignoring your sister's complaints, and something that should have been treated early got worse, until it became an abscess needing expensive treatment. You've been a better parent than them. Knowing my parents, I think you're probably right. But knowing my sister, I think there's a solid chance she didn't even bother telling them because she knew I was going to be her temporary guardian soon. I've had to help her get antibiotics for UTIs and stuff before. They're good parents in literally every other aspect. But this is a real and serious issue I have with the way they raised us. Good parents don't medically neglect their kids. Not the a-hole. Do your parents realize that your sister could have died if the abscess was not dealt with? It's a pretty serious thing when you get an infection so close to the sinuses and brain, especially if it was an upper tooth. It was damn serious and you did the right thing. What would your parents have done if they were there? Let your sister get sicker and end up in hospital or worse? In fact, they're probably negligent if they don't take her for regular checkups. Our parents are alright, but they tend to be weird about medical stuff. They don't actually believe us or act like we're making it out to be worse than it really is. I can count on one hand the number of times I went to the dentist before moving out, and I've helped my sister access treatment when our parents wouldn't on several occasions, but nothing like this before. Assuming their stance hasn't changed, they said that I should have waited to take her in until I got in touch with them and talked out payment options. They were insistent that a problem was how I paid. They just also made multiple comments about being impulsive or not believing her right away. I get that maybe it messed with her credit, but I thought we had established payments before they even left. No, it doesn't mess with your credit in any way to put an expense on an existing card then pay it off. They gave you a card to cover expenses. Your sister had what was a genuine medical emergency that could have put her in the hospital or even killed her. You say this isn't new behavior, that your parents have always been funny about medical issues, and didn't always take you to be treated when they should have. That can be considered abuse. You're not the a-hole, and quite honestly, the fact that you think you might be tells me that your parents have not quite been the good people you say they were. By the way, I'm a 43 male with a daughter. I know kids sometimes lie about illnesses to avoid going to school or something, but in general, you can tell when that's likely the case. If my daughter says she's sick or something hurts or whatever, I talk about it with her, and I take whatever action seems appropriate. This is how things like this should be handled. And now for the update. The other night, I talked to my sister a bit about what happened, and she said Mom and Dad didn't tell her they weren't inviting me to Christmas. When she asked where I was on Christmas morning, my dad told her I wasn't able to make it. She knew that was BS because I have told her for sure if something came up. And when she got a chance to talk away from all the visiting family, she let me know what was up. After we called, she apparently got pretty worked up and decided to confront our parents about not inviting me, and pressed really hard on the subject of the credit card, and that they're still mad that I kept her from dying while I was her guardian. Mom started crying. Dad started yelling at Mom that it is her fault her daughters are like this. Sister told Dad to shut the heck up and don't talk about me like I'm not here. Dad then backhanded my sister. She told me that I obviously called CPS. Some other stuff happened I won't even get into, and now my sister is at my apartment. My dad has an order from law enforcement not to be on the same property as her for at least a week. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I haven't heard from my mom except to let me know where she and dad are staying, separate from each other in case anything happens. My sister told me the weeks I was her guardian were the easiest 6 weeks of her life. I told her I'm sorry I didn't step in sooner. We cried a lot, and I let her stay up late to play World of Warcraft with me and make mini cheesecakes. I'll post an update if anything happens, but I think she and I are gonna be okay. I know someone who died from an abscessed tooth. Those things are no joke. These parents are criminals. I've had 2 friends end up in ICU because of abscesses. One had to have surgery to open his chest because the infection had drained into his lungs. The other had to have a shunt put in because the infection was too close to his brain. OP saved her sister's life. When her father is old and sick, she can happily not pay a dime for medical treatment, just like dear old dad would have wanted. Jesus, the slow realization of OP that her parents are bad people, contrary to what she had always believed. Good for AITA for opening her eyes. That was the part that made me want to post this. I'm so glad she realized. I truly dread the thought of kids in this kind of situation who do not have a lifeboat sibling. My sister told me the weeks I was her guardian were the easiest 6 weeks of her life. Hoo boy, that is heartbreaking. Or the fact that she, a teen, knew that her parents would blow off her medical complaints. How many things have they ignored already? Flashback to my broken leg, when my parents refused to take me to a doctor for 2 days because maybe it will get better. I am truly horrified at how many people have also had similar things happen, and I hope you are all taking good care of yourselves both physically and mentally and moving past these childhood traumas.